There we go. Good afternoon, evening, wherever it might be where you are. This is the finial from last week. I got kind of a nasty comment, which I didn't totally disagree with, on Instagram that said my finial was way too big for the piece. So since it's still able to be chucked up, we are going to trim it down, hopefully without destroying it. If we do, I still have another piece of that material, so we'll just start over, but I'd like to think that I'm able to trim it down some. So we shall see. First off, it was too long, so the first order of business, we'll just trim off about there. Now that little piece is gone. I should get my toys a little closer, maybe. And of course, we have to try and figure out what all we're going to take off. But really, this first order of business is going to be make a new little cap piece for the top. This thing's probably going to chatter the whole time. It means we have to be very, very gentle. I think we're going to get rid of that. Preferably not banging into everything else, but I don't want to reduce the diameter of that either. I already made the mistake. I probably made it too thin back there already. This is definitely where you should do it right the first time, so you don't have to go back and screw around with this. now I'll probably get it too small, if that's possible. I'm not worried really about it being even sort of lumpy. It would be nice if I could get it to cut cleanly, but it's cutting cleanly, but it's not leaving me quite the surface because it's trying to run away. And that was better. And not only did I bang into it, it knocked the chip out of it. I think that looks better. So the real true test is to take it over onto the piece. See what it looks like. I think that'll look much better. Yep. That's what we're going to do. We're going to call it good at that. So we'll sand it up, finish it up. And we're going to call that good enough. Certainly good enough to give away, because that's what this will be done with. So we'll back our speed down. And we'll give it a sand. Even once you squeal a little bit, just sanding it. Bring your speed up just a little bit more. You gotta get all the ripples out of it that I put in. Certainly much better to do this right the first time than to be coming back after it. Try and do it right the second time. Put the cut edge of the sandpaper down in. Do a little loop. So that was 220. Like I said, I wasn't planning on going back very far sandpaper wise, because don't really need to, for one. Even though I had some ripples in, you see that something small like this, those ripples are going to come out very quickly, very easily. And you're going to Probably shouldn't have sanded up there with 220 because I can see some pretty good scratches in there. Hopefully they come out as we proceed. This stuff is kind of oily as well. I think that'll be alright. 2 more grits and done. Tricky parts to get in there to sand some of this stuff. I think that should work. And while we're at it, and we have the 800 in hand, I'm going to sand with the grain to make sure that I get rid of any of the radial scratches in there. Extra 30 seconds or a minute might save me some aggravation of being able to see some lines. Gotta work. Glove, we'll give it a finish. That one will be done. We can work on, since I have those jaws on, I think we're going to work on the other little one from the other week. We'll just kind of make this a try and finish up some stuff kind of day. As usual, 3408. And we're going to slow the speed way down because we're going to be able to spin this and put it on. A little bit on our paper towel. Wipe it on. Give it a bit of time to soak in. Wipe off the excess. There was a considerable amount of excess on there. Because we only want what's soaked into the wood. This is not a build-up kind of finish. It looks pretty dull, so that means I've gotten all the excess off the surface. And we'll give it a little shot of activator. And that'll be good. I'll just keep my glove on to get this piece out. Give it one last look. I think that'll be a much better look. To get that, the finial will need buffed, but it needs to cure overnight. For that. Glove off. And now I think we're going to do a finial for this other little guy. This is going to be a short stream. I was planning on streaming tomorrow, but I need to go help out my people at Woodcraft tomorrow. Not something that I'm necessarily equipped to do. I've never worked in retail in my entire life. But I said I would come help because they were short-handed. So that's what we're going to do. So I need a measurement of some sorts on this little guy. That's just shy of 1 inch. Ooh. Upside down, that's not going to be big enough because that's just over 1 inch. So I need something bigger but not giant size. This is where you should have looked at something, found a piece before you started. That would make life easier. The ironic part is I only need a tiny little piece. Oh, that's sycamore. Don't want that. So you have to bear with me a short second here while we find something of interest to do the finial with. Piece of maple would work. That would be overkill, but that would work. Question will be, whether these jaws are actually open up big enough to get a hold of it. It looks like they will. So that'll work. I'm just looking here quickly to see whether I have something similar laying around. That's soft maple. Well, I guess this piece of maple is going to be what it's going to be. This is by no means probably the really good way of doing this, especially seeing as how it's got a kind of chunked off end. I'm sure it's not even round. Well, it's not too bad as far as roundness. I would assume that this is going to chatter like crazy out here. Maybe if I get the chunked off part, I can put the tailstock up against it and see what we can do. It's surprising we're not getting a vibration out of that. It's one of them situations on this one that I did the number of, parted it down, and all I knew I was going to get rid of this end, so I just kind of like twisted it off, so it left a big, really kind of a big chunk in there. Big place where it tore a bunch of it out. It's also not round up here. So if we just use the wing, we can make it round. Not open the feet before you get a place for it to go. Still have torn crap in there. There we go. It's kind of a lot of work just to make a little bit of something. Of course, that was, did I say that was an inch? And there's still a little bit left. Now I think we have it. So I guess the real question, I think these jaws will go down to about 7/8 of an inch. So if I make a tenon that fits up inside of that, at least that's the theory behind it, that I should be able to grab it with those jaws. These are actually dovetail jaws, so we'll need a dovetail tenon. Doesn't have, really doesn't have to be dovetailed though. But it would be better if I had a measurement of this little guy on the inside. So that I know where I can go down to. I think we'll just use a straight parting tool rather than the angled one. It might make life a little easier. Barely goes over it. Does go over, so I guess we'll make this fit our little hollow form. It's not quite there on that. And then now I need a little bit more than that. Just like with the big one, I don't want this to fit tight by any means, because it's certainly not round in that hole. It was fairly green when I turned it, so better if I make that a taper rather than trying to make it straight. Okay, that actually works. Right about where the taper is at is where it fits. So I make the taper straight again. It's a little tight. Here's where I am going to use my angled one, because where it's tight is back here in the back. So I think that'll work just fine. Question is, probably really can't. This is kind of hard with the kit. I don't have the super fancy cameras like some people do. I can try. Might make more sense. Go to there. So now I'll go back to my spindle gouge. This stuff out of the road so I don't knock something down. And then we'll give this an undercut. This is way, of course, way too big out here. This will be kind of a bit of messing about here to get that. Needs more than that up underneath. And then we'll probably end up shortening that. It's like every wise man said, you can take it off, but you can't put it back on. So we don't want. It's a little easier to take more off of that bottom of that tenon. It actually looks like that's going to be enough there. Now the question is, the tenon is going to be probably a shade on the long side because of the jaws that's on there. If I go beyond the, get back beyond the dovetail part, it may not work so well. So I'll just trim some of that down a little bit. Knock that little sharp edge off. It's kind of hard to tell until I take some of this away. So, how about if we go to this view? Not in the right place. Move that camera to there. And then we have both at one time. Bring that over a little bit down. There we go. So I think we'll get rid of some material up here so that this is not so cotton thick and heavy. And go from trying to figure out just how big actually we want it. I think that would be considerably too big. Can have a fairly, to me, they can have a fairly big rim. Which is basically what that would be. I think that's probably enough there. think we will grab our bowl gouge and we're going to get rid of some material while we got it in this fashion, just so that we can, when we flip it around, we have less material to deal with. Oh, thing close, just loose. I guess it really probably doesn't need to do that, because when I flip it around, I'm going to use I will use the live center, at least for a while, to get it down closer to what I want. Right there, there's probably only one time that I'm going to be able to get in here and actually sand a little bit on that tendon, as well as the bottom of it. So I better do that before I do anything else. That's also a place that you could probably try and put a little flower on the bottom of that, maybe. That's another one of them things that I haven't quite perfected, that's for sure. Looks easy when other people do it, but so we use our Swerby texturing tool. And it looks to be about center. This is the one without the bearing, so it needs to go down between 400 and 500 RPMs. Let's see what we got. Not really the flower looking thing, but it's a, yeah. Not what I had in mind. So I'll just take it off, throw it down, more. Be patient this time. Looks better, but I still don't get the little, I don't get the little flower thing that some people do. But I tried umpteen times with it. I can get it one time, but to go back and actually get it the second time is just not, doesn't seem to be in the cards for me. So this better go the whole way. Oh man, it's close. Them jaws are just about closed. Actually, they are closed. Shit. Doesn't work because this is curved down in, so it wants to grab back too far. Not what I wanted to see. So if I make another gripping point somewhere up in here, that won't work either. Well, that's going to make that extra difficult. And now I put marks in there, so that's also going to make this sort of, didn't get that back where I had it. It's definitely not the way to do this. That'll definitely be a nice sloppy fit now. That's not as bad as I thought it would be. Well, I think we'll go ahead and shape this. I have another idea that I could make a little jam chuck for this to slide into. Now, I think we're just going to keep whittling this down, get some sort of a shape out of it anyhow, and then we're going to figure out from there what we're going to do. And we'll leave lots of mass up there. Probably about the extent. What I'm going to be able to do right there, at least there, with the bowl gouge. Go back to our spindle gouge, we pick up behind the curve. And grab a little piece of 400 sandpaper, and I'm going to take that razor blade away before I end up touching it. I think that'll work. So there's a little more material. And go back to our spindle gouge. This is where it becomes difficult to visualize what we're trying to do. And we could probably just go strictly back overhead and then in a little bit more. Looks like, to me, it looks fat. What you call doing things backwards. All else fails, actually look at it on the piece, it might help. Definitely too fat, because it's going to be, that piece is not very big, it's only like 3 inches long, so, or 3 inches, yeah, about, it's about actually about 3 by 3, I think. So we'll stop and reduce this diameter again. Goes back into there. Spindle gouge does not really particularly care for that maneuver of cutting right straight into end grain like it is. Spindle gouge doesn't like to remove a lot of material to start with, so going straight into end grain is not its friend. Definitely for sure not the right way of doing this. And I probably should have given this just a tiny chamfer. Maybe better off just a straight ball. That kind of sounds like a bad decision to me. So I would have chipped that up. Fortunately it didn't. But well, you won't be able to see it, but there's all kind of little chatter marks on there. But they will sand out pretty quickly and easily on something this small. I think that's probably about the height that we want. This probably could actually be smaller, but I know if I keep playing, I'm just going to break it. Because I have no tailstock support. I could try one thing with the tailstock end of it. Not, hopefully not put any, well, I won't put any marks on it. It's just a piece of leather. This goes over top of the tailstock. Really just want enough pressure. Do it that way. Now I probably actually can go back in here and cut some more without that chattering. Now we can get a nice clean cut, save us some sanding work. You don't keep messing around down there. Take a little bit off just to make it make the curve look better. This way we can keep on taking things back and looking at it. I think that'll be okay. This could probably be a little bit smaller up there. And then we'll just put a little something on the end. A little ball or something. Better sand the rest, or sand it up to that point. I think I can just sort of slope that down into nothingness, and literally should be able just to cut that off That's probably will be smooth enough as long as I make a good clean cut. It's all end grain. As long as I'm cutting downhill across the end grain, that should actually work. We'll see, but we're slower speed down a bit. I don't think I need to go in there. This is 220. Need to trim it up to get to some fresh sandpaper. So now I have a clean cut edge to allow me to get in there to those places. This is where you should have little fingers instead of big fingers. Just like the other one, I'll just take the ripples out rather than try and keep chasing it, cutting. I mean, it would be better if I would be more patient and cut it cleanly and not leave any of those ripples or anything like that behind. But if you do, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, I don't do a lot of this kind of small work, so I don't necessarily have the touch that some people would. Knock that corner off a little bit. So we'll just go through the grits, go up to 800. Probably really don't even need to go that high. Because in order to turn this, for me to turn this nice black, shiny black, probably the ideal, simplest way for me is going to be use black shellac. Which I'll end up doing, making a little bit of a jam chuck or something there. So you ought to stick that into it. And then we'll just spray it black. And that way you can tell everybody, oh yeah, it's blackwood, that's blackwood. Where the only person that knows anything about something like that is the other wood turner in the world. Because the average person walking into a craft show or something like that, they would look at you and say, oh yeah, that's nice. Because they have no clue that it's, you know, an exotic wood that's stupidly expensive. They just know what you tell them. So of course the less you tell them, the better off you are. So that's sanded. Now we got to break this free. Because I have my doubts on that I could actually get. That's certainly probably not very straight in there, and it goes up underneath this rim. So I think that's my best best solution is to just cut down here. If I don't get it perfect down there, I might be able to try and do something with it a little bit. If nothing else, we'll just get rid of the tailstock. And give it the old reach over. I'll cut it off long because I'm sure I'm going to be able to make enough of a recess It's amazing how little it takes actually to hang on to it. That's actually pretty good. Like I said, it is hard maple, and it's cut perfectly clean going up across there. All it is a little bit of fuzziness on the top edge. I think tiny bit of hand sanding. I don't personally, there's a lot of people that make finials that leave that sharp point up there. I personally don't like that, especially in something hard. If somebody's going to pick it up and use it or what have you. So I think that's sort of respectable. So now we just have to figure out, we're going to turn it black. We already have a block of wood in there. So, get our tailstock in the road. We do need a flat, sort of a flat surface. So if we go back and measure this little guy, don't really like using these calipers in this way, in this fashion, because for one, they really don't have a very good point on them. At least that gives me an idea where it's at. Use a little more speed than that. And I guess it would make more sense too if we go back to there. So where's our finial? See if we can eyeball that as to whether that's close. All right, George, that looks pretty darn close. So now we need a little recess in there. That's going to be the kind of challenging, fun part of it. Do a little bit of a hole. Get the chip that's stuck right fast to the end of the gouge. Now, let's see what my next problem is going to be. I know how I want to take that out of there. I'm going to use my traditional scraper to do it. Get on. Ooh. That's a little bit, sucker's just a tad bit on the wide side. So we use one that's actually a negative rake. Now we need a handle for it. that's that size. Not that one either. And a big handle. There we go. More like a 5/8. This is a homemade tool. Both of them were. And sort of in playing around making some of this stuff. Some of this kind of, to me, some of this, you know, what you call them, specialty tools. Granted, you could buy them in, you know, in good steel and Thompson. I mean, Cindy Drozda makes a bunch of the stuff that for like lidded boxes and things like that. But it's like everything you look at would be $100, where this is just a piece of plain high-speed steel from Amazon, no less. Takes a fair amount of grinding. I want to take this one. Show you that way, I guess. I actually want to cut this one off square again and make this full width. But actually, for what I'm going to use it for, this is probably a good thing that it's not full width. So now we have to try and sneak up on that to make it we're not even close. To make it a fit. I'm going to try and keep it relatively parallel. Closer. If you need to take out a little bit more material on the bottom, you just stick that corner right in there, come out to the outside. And that's what you call very, very close. The thing of it with this one is, any other time I would say that's good enough, but I'm going to spray the shellac on this piece, so I want this to go basically the whole way down in underneath that rim, so that I don't spray black on the bottom. I just want to, I will leave that bottom natural wood. Dust out of there. Still, I think you could. I think you could actually maybe force that a little bit, but it's not worth forcing it and breaking the finial to try and get it back out. I think that's going to be the fit. We just need to make it a little bit deeper than what it is. Definitely get rid of the center part. Kind of a lot of farting around just to do a little bit of work, isn't it? Okay. Still bottoming out a little bit. Famous last words. One little tiny cut down in the corner. This is sort of less than 90 degrees in that direction. so that when I go into the corner, it's not being aggressive and trying to cut across the end grain. That's explaining it properly. And still just doesn't quite get there. Could probably just use my no, that won't work. I do have a round bar skew. That's what I was looking for, but I don't see it. Let me do it. There it is. Tiny little round bar skew. But that will actually rub against the outside and go down in that corner nicely. Let's see whether we got what we needed. Yeah. Thing is still bottoming out on the bottom a little bit, so we got to remove a little bit more material down on the bottom. And that's probably best used to spindle gouge, because I'm sure that what there is a little hump in the middle. Now we'll go back to our little skew. Which is a little negative rake scraper. And we probably could actually use the bigger one. This is easy. Certainly isn't very pretty in there, and it's probably now getting it tapered outward, which I did. A little piece of paper towel will take care of that. Just looking at, see if we have our negative rake scraper. Take a little off of that. I left a little burr on there. So a tiny little bit of sandpaper or something there. Maybe just take this little sharp edge off. And now a tiny little piece of paper towel, 1 ply. And matter of fact, it'll probably be just, rather than like a full way around, at least that's my thought, would be to use, it's almost a full way around anyhow. Now the trick is going to be to get it to tear off underneath there. This may be cause me more trouble than what it's worth. I think that'll do it. Hopefully there's not enough paper towel there when I spray the shellac on there that it goes crazy. We'll find out very directly. Of course, the ironic part of that is I won't plug the hairbrush in here and get this black shellac out. But the shellac will take a little while to dry, so I probably won't be able to, may not be able to pull that out tonight. I know my track record, I gotta get another glove. Anytime I get any of that's colored stuff out, I always manage to get it on my fingers. I'm very good at it. We'll get our trusty little airbrush. Dumped a little bit of alcohol that was still in there. This is sort of what you call the poor man's way of spraying stuff, some stuff, but it works very well for me. This is just the de-wax shellac that has some black dye in it. It's plain old trans tint dye to turn it black. It does a real good job turning it black. I gotta get my towel first. I don't want to spray the bedways. Don't want more work. And I will turn on my dust collector, which is going to, probably can go back to overhead. Move this camera just a tad. And then we can come in. A little bit closer. There we go. I just turned my dust collector on just for the fact of getting a cloud of mist away from me. So we'll turn it nice and slow. Nice light coat. Like I say, it is shellac, so shellac dries very quickly. You see places where I got it a little heavier than others, and it's not. That's probably enough. We'll let it set up here a minute or so. It looks like right in that area right there, there's sort of some end grain or something. So it's soaking in is what it's doing. Same way on the very bottom, there's some places. So here's where it takes a little bit of patience and just let it do its thing. Let it start to set up because we don't want any runs in there at this point. I'll let this sit probably sometime tomorrow or another day this week, and I can come down here. I'll switch over. I use a water-based lacquer that I used for years doing furniture work, and it works really well out of the spray gun too. And of course, it's water-based, so there's none of the obnoxious lacquer smell. So once this totally cures for a day or so, if I need to, I can go back and sort of hit any areas that maybe stood up the grain or something like that. It's just a couple little areas where it's pure end grain. And when it comes right down to it, to put on a handful of coats of shellac like this, I mean, granted, it's not as protective as lacquer would be, but this is not a piece that's going to be handled, you know, daily, weekly, or anything like that. So we're going to have to let that, set up, or else I'm going to have some runs. If I keep spraying in that same little area, it will not be a good situation. The wonders of these little inexpensive airbrushes. This is a siphon feed one. All I got to do is close that nozzle, and I can leave the shellac in there. It will start to set up. There's a little air hole in there, but you can let it sit for, definitely can let it sit overnight or anything like that. And I can come back down even later tonight. You know, all I got to do is turn it on and spray it a little bit more. But that's how you know, that's how I turn something shiny black. That's not a black wood. The bottom of it, the base of it or whatever, I'll use a little bit of the 3408. Seal that up once I get the top the way I want it to. Some ways you could dye, I could dye that. I've done that before. I've tried that before. The dye, especially on like that on a hard maple, the dye doesn't seem to do, it doesn't make it as black as the blackened shellac does. That's why I like to use the shellac instead. But other than that, that's going to be it for me. Unless somebody has any questions, comments. Otherwise, that's about it for me. Time to go get some din din. As always, thanks for watching, and if you can hit that cute little button that says subscribe, that would be wonderful. Other than that, I probably will be here next Friday as well, and then after that, hopefully we'll be, well, I should be back to Saturdays. I normally do this on a Saturday, late afternoon, early evening. Stop back and check it out.